gun lawyer.
Hey y'all, this is Bentley the Gun Dog here at the Gun Lawyer. I wanted to show you a few neat toys that I have here. I'm not going to show you my whole collection for privacy reasons, but one of my favorite suppressors is my Osprey 45. I got this in my FMP TAC pistol 45. Great suppressor, real quiet, a lot of fun to shoot. Really like that. That's a really neat piece there. I had Gun Envy, a friend of mine here in Columbus, Ohio. It's a FFL manufacturer. Had them make this for me. It's an SBR. It's got a 7.5 inch barrel here. Suppressor slides into the Picatinny rail so that I don't burn my hand when I touch it. It's just a 5.56, solid shooter. Really like that gun too. Pain in the ass to clean though. That carbon really builds up. My very first suppressor was an AAC before Remington bought them out. Still one of my favorite cans that I got. Got it here on one of my first AR-15s, Bushmaster. You know, it's a solid gun, never had any issues with it, really like it. My personal defensive carbine is my Scar. Really like this. I run a ACOG on it with an RMR on top for close quarters combat. And I use a Streamlight TR1 for the light on the front. Just a great tack driver, absolutely 100% accurate. Never had an issue with this. I got some mods too. I got some mag pull items that I put on it. I drop a Geisley trigger in there and things like that. But real cool stuff. So to get a lot of the stuff like the SBRs and the suppressors, you gotta get them registered with the ATF NFA branch. That's the National Firearms Act branch. Really cool history behind that law. I'm really into a lot of history with regards to the mobs and the mafia. And the law actually came because of the street sweepers, the 45s and the different caliber Thompson submachine guns during the Al Capone days. And if you remember the Valentine's Day, St. Valentine's Day massacre with the Bugs and Moran gang, a lot of people were being killed during Prohibition. So 34 comes around, Congress decides the act, passes the 1934 National Firearms Act. It's actually a tax law. It's actually one of the first gun control laws in the United States, and it was filed under the Internal Revenue Code. I believe it's Title 26, if I remember correctly. With that said, what happened was, well, actually at one point was declared unconstitutional because what some of the city mayors and county sheriffs would do, such as, I believe it's Cook County where Chicago's at. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm pretty sure that's what county Chicago's in. They would call up the ATF NFA branch and say, hey, who out of our residents is on the registry that with machine guns? Because they're illegal in our town. They give them the list and they go out and arrest them and prosecute them. So the Congress had to go back to the drawing board and made it a confidential tax record when you actually register these firearms now. Pretty cool stuff. A little bit of other history you got there. One of the first ATF agents worked for the Department of Treasury was Elliot Ness, whom actually died in the state of Ohio up in Cleveland of alcoholism of everything. He was taxed with bringing down the Capone gang and during Prohibition. Al Capone, funny enough, died of syphilis at his Miami Beach home. So a little bit of history there for you guys. Not really relevant to guns. Anyhow, so they passed that law with the goal of getting these guns out of the hands of these criminals. The funny thing is that criminals don't obey laws. Big surprise, right? It's a $200 tax if you're going to add a gun to the registry like an SBR. This was made. If I were to cut a regular rifle down with a barrel less than 16 inches, I'd have to register it myself on what's known as a Form 1. If I buy like a suppressor that's already on the registry, which is known as the National Firearms Transaction Registry, the NFTR, I pay $200 and do what's called a Form 4. Either way, it's generally speaking $200. There is certain catch-all categories called AOWs that are only $5 for a tax. Why $200? Where did that number come from? A lot of people don't ask that. It's been around since '34. It's how much a Thompson basically cost back in 1934. So it became 100% tax on the firearm. In a lot of ways, it became a rich person's game because no one could afford that. If you look at inflation, roughly $3,500 maybe today is what that would be if they actually provided for inflation. So a month's salary, a lot of money just to transfer these guns. You see an influx in the market in the last decade or so, primarily because the value of the dollar has gone just way down. So more people can afford that $200. 1986 rolls around, and if you guys YouTube the Hughes Amendment, really cool stuff. You had the Federal Gun Owners Protection Act. Hughes offered an amendment, one of the congressmen at the time, and it passed. Allegedly passed. I think they took it with an oral vote. If you actually watch the clip from Congress, with Charlie Rangel as the Speaker of the House. But what that amendment basically said, you had basically 2 months from today's date to register your machine guns, not your suppressors, not your SBRs, but your actual fully automatic machine guns, which is defined as any automatic firearm that's capable of firing multiple rounds from a single function of the trigger. So you had to get these guns on the registry within a short amount of time. If they weren't, they could not be transferred. So people registered whatever machine guns they had. It's a finite number now. So with the value of the dollar going down, you have more demand because people can afford these guns now, afford the tax, but you have limited supply with machine guns. So machine gun prices have just skyrocketed. Cheapest machine gun you may be able to get, if you're lucky, around $4,000, probably more like $5,000 or $6,000. And they just go up astronomically from there. Average price probably somewhere in the $20,000 range, depending on what you're buying and the condition, the make and model. Really cool stuff though. One of the requirements to purchase these items is to get your sheriff to sign off. Depending on what your state in, the sheriff may or may not have to do that. That law came about because in 1934 we didn't have the internet, we didn't have NICS, the National Instant Criminal Check System, and couldn't do a background check on somebody. So the sheriff knew who the bad apples were because we weren't largely as much of a transient society. So that law still exists today, but it's usually been exploited politically. Your anti-gun sheriffs won't sign off for political reasons, and the Republicans generally will. Generally, it falls between the Republican and Democratic line. Not always, but generally it does. With that said, some states have moved and acted requiring their sheriffs to sign off. There's still ways around that. I still wouldn't want my sheriff to know I have, none of his business, right? You can form what's known as a trust or an LLC or some sort of company that purchases the item, and you can get around that regulation. President Obama has moved to change that under what's known as Rule 41P, has yet to take effect. Not sure if it's going to. We had to pay attention, watch for that. A lot of other benefits to the trust. We preach the trust at our office. The LLC is a good idea too. Just depends what you're looking for. Trust has the death benefit, so it handles the property at death. One of the biggest benefits is you get multiple trustees in the trust that are allowed to legally possess these items. Now, possession is defined as dominion and control. You know, there's case law out there that you don't actually have to be touching the gun to be possessing it. Right now, I'm in possession of that gun because I can exert dominion and control over the gun without touching it. So if you have people living in your house with you and you got these guns, it's ideal to put them on the trust as trustees. A lot of other benefits to trust. Our office offers collector's trust and asset protection trust. So just wanted to give you guys a little introduction to this type of stuff. Call us, ohiogunlawyer.com, 614-326-1919, and let us put you into a machine gun.